All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. So my name is Heather Lai, and I am a mechanical engineering professor in the Division of Engineering Programs at SUNY New Paltz. And so SUNY New Paltz is a fairly small, comprehensive liberal arts college with a incredibly small engineering program. But I'm going to talk specifically about how I was able to utilize a particular platform, Matlab Grader, in order to begin to incorporate instant feedback to my students as they are working on activities and homework assignments. So like I mentioned a minute ago, I'm going to be mostly just showing examples. And so if at any point when I'm talking you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand, or if you stick something in the chat. I don't know. Hey, Ping, does it like put up a bubble or something?
It should, but can we unmute ourselves and ask in case? Okay,
That's
good.
perfectly fine. I think that that's the best if you feel brave enough to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically, first of all, I just want to tell you a little bit about the class in particular that I'm using this for. Now, this isn't the only class that I use it for, but I feel like it's the most successful one that I've had. So the class is computer simulations class. It's 300 level, which means that it's mostly third-year students that are going to be in this. So they've got some stuff under their belts related to engineering, but not a whole lot yet. And it's required for both mechanical and electrical engineering students. It's housed in the electrical engineering program, so that's the EGE there. But as I mentioned before, I'm a mechanical engineering professor, so it can be taught by either electrical or mechanical. Over the last several years, it's been taught by an adjunct who also has a mechanical engineering background, and me, so primarily mechanical engineers. So this is the third time, this semester is the third time I'm teaching this course. So the first time was in the fall of 2020, which probably like everybody else, we were doing a lot of online teaching then. So I designed the course as an online asynchronous course. And then you'll see that, as I said, that it had 3 hours of scheduled or remote office hours. Okay, so that's, whoops, wrong thing. So let's see if I can get this to work. Yeah, there we go. No, sorry, maybe this way. No, oh well. Sorry, I was trying to get the pointer to work. So anyways, basically what that meant was when the students went in to register for the class, they actually registered for a set time. And during that time, I basically opened up a remote session, and students could come or go as they wanted to. They could ask questions and I would answer them. And to my surprise, almost every single student would show up every week. And, you know, the questions would spur things on. I would answer things. I would help them with homework, but I didn't prepare anything beyond all of the online content that I'd already had for them. So then when we went back into more in person in the fall, I transitioned it to a hybrid model. So what happened then was they met once a week for basically half the contact hours, and then the rest of the time was spent doing work asynchronously. And what I found was that a lot of students still really needed sort of more of that scheduled time to meet with me. And so now, actually, there's a typo here. In spring 20, there's a lot of typos here. Sorry. This spring, so that should have been spring 2022. It's hybrid, and then it actually has 1.5 or 1.25 hours a week of scheduled in-person office hours. So so now when they schedule for the class, they schedule it kind of using a standard scheduling block. So basically one class on Monday, one class on Thursday kind of thing. They're required to come on Thursdays, and then I hold office hours in the lab as if it was a class being taught on Mondays. And so students can show up for that. So that's the transition that's kind of been going on. So that's sort of the context. And so the content of the course, you can see that by the student learning outcomes, the course is really designed to be a programming course, like a basic programming course. So you can see they're supposed to be able to develop computer algorithms using MATLAB. Mostly those algorithms are related to mostly related to numerical methods, but it's definitely not a numerical methods class because I usually teach only one method for each thing that we're going to do. And then the second learning outcome is using those computer methods to solve problems in engineering applications. And so down below, you can see here, you can see all of these different topics that are covered. And so, we start with just a brief introduction, and then we go into solving systems of linear equations. This is kind of what I'm doing right now in this class. Then we jump into integration, root finding, derivatives, and then the last big chunk, so about the last month of class, is all on modeling systems using differential equations. And so since that's kind of our thing here, most of my example that I'm going to show is going to be based on activities from this unit here, the unit 6. So the real benefits that I've seen from using this is, and I'll kind of talk more about each of these, but the students can have access to MATLAB when they're not in the labs. I can write sort of more interesting activities for them to do, and I can like implement it in MATLAB Grader. Also, I can embed data into the problems that I give them without the students needing to worry about saving files in the right place or opening them up or losing them or corrupting files. And then the big one is that I can set it up so students can get instant feedback as they are kind of going through the process of coding and trying to solve problems. Okay, so I think at this point, I made some slides with some examples, but I'd rather just kind of jump in and show you the stuff that I have instead. So I'm going to turn off this PowerPoint, and then we're going to start looking at some of these things. All right, so first of all, I'm curious to know, actually, everyone here is at least familiar with MATLAB, right? So here's MATLAB. Okay, so I've used MATLAB for quite a long time. Before I used MATLAB, I actually used Octave for a while before I had access to MATLAB. And then I transitioned when I had access to it. And I've pretty much used it for the last 20 years pretty consistently. However, most of the time when I was originally using MATLAB, I had files that were script files, right? So they looked kind of like this, and you typed in your code and you ran it, and it would show up down here at the command window. So over the past, I would say, probably 5 years or so, MATLAB has really increased the functionality of their live scripts. And so the live scripts have allowed me to sort of transition from more of a text only based method of sort of demonstrating and disseminating information to more of a much more visual type of thing. Okay, so in live scripts, you can incorporate equations and images. You can take photos, put them in active links, right? So you can, kind of put all kinds of stuff in here. So what MATLAB Grader does is it allows me to sort of provide information in a similar to the way it looks in a live script, but then it will also allow me to program some types of checks and balances as well. So this is MATLAB. And I encourage the students to use MATLAB as much as possible. And so as I mentioned before, this is a hybrid class. So there are really a couple of primary ways that I use MATLAB Grader. The first is through their asynchronous activities, right? So when we do something a hybrid, we have to give them some way to learn outside of class. And then in class, we come up with some activities that they can do to help, work together to kind of really reinforce what they've been learning. So I use MATLAB Grader for activities, and then I also use MATLAB Grader very heavily for the homeworks. So for the homework, to tell them, to give them the assignments, to then give them feedback, and then to also collect all their answers and grade it. So those are the two primary things. So I'll be talking about activities, and I'll be talking about activities, and then I'll be talking about the homeworks. Okay, so and so like I said, I develop everything here in MATLAB, and then I move it to Grader. And the easiest way to do that really is you can export it as an HTML, right? So if I take something like this, I can export it as an HTML, and then once I have that, then I can actually cut and paste everything that's on that HTML right into MATLAB Grader. So that's trick number one if you're using MATLAB Grader. So see, this is everything that I had in that live script. I can turn off the solutions if I don't want that, if I just want the text, and then I can just cut and paste this whole thing, right? And then if I come over here to Grader, and let's say I want to just simply make a new, you can make a new part. Let's see here. Well, anyways, I can show you in a minute. Here it is right here. So you can make a new thing. You can basically just cut it and paste it right in here, and there it is. Okay, so I've pasted it in here, and you can see that all of the equations are there. They're still live equations. So if I want to, I can edit them. I can make changes to them. Any links that are here will still be live links. But the big difference is that what you're looking at right now is not actually MATLAB. This is just something that the students can read. Okay, so this is maybe the biggest thing that's a little bit tricky with MATLAB Grader. And that is that they have to actually type in their code down below. Okay, so another couple of things about MATLAB, and those of you that use it in your schools may know more than me, but there's several different ways that you can access it depending on your license. They have just sort of the standard campus license, which is what we have. Remember, we're a small school. We don't have a lot of money for software. So we have sort of the barest thing that we kind of can as far as institutional license. You can also at this point get licenses for online MATLAB. That seemed to be incredibly cost prohibitive for us, so we weren't able to do that. And then there's probably other ways to do it. But the nice thing about MATLAB Grader is that I didn't even know this, but it's, at whatever point I started looking into it, it actually comes with our institutional license. So I think it's built in as a perk for any academic institutional license that you have. So even if you don't have access to MATLAB online, which is, I think, substantially more expensive than just an institutional license. If you have an institutional license, it's worth looking into, because I believe that you may have access to MATLAB Grader without any additional resources needing to be used. Okay, so that being said, there probably are a lot of things that you could do with MATLAB online that I can't do, but I'll show you what I've done with MATLAB Grader. So, okay, so here's an activity, right? So I have this activity, I designed this, developed it based on several other texts. I usually will put, so here, for instance, is a link to the online text that I use to develop this. So then that way the students can go to that as well, and then they can work through this. And so in addition to this, I'll actually give them the live script with empty points. So see how there's all these 0 zeros? Everywhere that there's a 0 0, that's a place where they're going to be expected to figure out what goes in there. Okay, now depending on how difficult you want the task to be, how much independent thinking you want, you can either let them do it all by themselves just like this, or you can be like me. After the first year of doing it, I started making videos. So I made these videos, and the videos go step by step through. Because remember, this is the asynchronous learning part. So it's kind of like they're sitting in class, except they can watch something 3 or 4 times if they don't get it the first time, right? So I basically go through each of the activities and they can follow along and fill in everything as they want to. So if I'm doing that, then why bother using Matlab Grader at all? Well, once they do their work, they can cut and paste their work into here. And then that way, they can know that they didn't make a mistake when they were doing it. But even more importantly for these activities, I can know that they actually went through and did it, right? So even though the answers have been given to them in the video, they still have to go through and type everything in. So that's where it's really helpful from this perspective to me. So the way that these activities, I just essentially look to see if they have the expected answers. Okay, and they know what the expected answers are because they've seen it in the video if they watched. And so I set the activities up so that every variable has a unique name. That's really important because what Matlab Grader does is I've just set up code that basically says compare this variable in the student's work with the variable in the reference that I had put up ahead of time. Okay, so I set it up so that I have my reference solution with all the correct answers. They can type in their solution, then they can submit it and it will go through and it will start looking. And it basically will, as soon as it finds a wrong one, it'll fail. It'll tell them something about why it's wrong. And then it'll go on. So you can set each of these up if you want to so that it tests every single one and you have a separate test for each one and then they'll know exactly which ones get wrong. But that takes a long time to run, not just to set up. So this is the way I've set it up. For each section, I pick certain variables that I think are most important and I have it assess them. Okay, so then at the end, as they go through, then they can identify, let's see if I can show you kind of what this looks like. So then here's what I see when, and so this is from last semester, right? And so then I can see how many students tried it. I can see how many of them got it right completely, how many got it wrong. And then I can go in and I can actually look at the work that they've done. So when it comes time to grade it, what I found is the easiest way to grade it is simply to come over here to say, let's see here. Oh, it's in draft mode, so it's not going to work. Let's see here. I'll pick one of these. These should work. This is an example of a homework, but I'll show you. So you come over once they've done it, and then you're going to, no, I'm in the wrong place. That's why it's not working. Here we go. I apologize. Okay, so when it's time to grade it, you would grade the entire assignment, right? So this only has one problem, but let's say it was this homework assignment, right? So from this homework assignment, I'll grade them all at the same time. So here's the homework assignment with all the activities. Once again, you can see each of the problems, what they did and what they couldn't do. And so I just basically make a report. On that report, I can choose, if I want to do the best thing from today or not. So I pick something, I can download it, and then what I'm able to do is basically read every single one of their answers. So I can go through. So I've set up an Excel spreadsheet that allows me to just quickly go through, and I can very quickly read each student's code that they wrote. I can then comment on it, and then it becomes very quick to grade, because that's the big thing that I want. Okay, so this is the activities. The other way that I use it is with homeworks. So here you can see this is a homework assignment. They can only see the things that aren't in draft mode. So these 3 assignments, I decided not to give them, but here you can see all the assignments that they had. I can very quickly see which ones the students are successful on. If we're halfway through and nobody has gotten it green yet, then I know that there's probably something, either a mistake that I've made in it, or there's something that's really confusing to the students. So then I can go back and give them feedback. But the thing that is really, really helpful for these kinds of problems is that the students pay a lot more attention to the accuracy of their answers. because of the fact that they're being assessed on them. So in the past, the first time I taught this class, I didn't use this method for homeworks. And what happened, what I found was that people just would make something that worked, and as long as it ran, they assumed that it was pretty good. And they would submit all kinds of stuff that really didn't work, but they had no way of knowing whether it worked or not. So now they'll work on a problem, and they'll be given a template. And in this case, it's a function, and there's a specific thing that they have to return. But actually, let me show you one other one. Let's see here. This might be. So the goal then that I have is to try to give them meaningful assessments, right? So in this problem, they are tasked with making a function that's going to apply a third order ODE. And so they're going to write this code, and or it takes in a third order ODE. And so you'll see that now they're returning several different things. They're returning the final solution to this ODE. And this is just running a built-in command, but they could also be writing code for themselves as well. And then it also takes in these intermediate, or exports out these intermediary variables, right? So I choose what information I want them to send out of the program, and then I can check for each of these things. So I can check to make sure that their intermediary steps are correct based on a set value, right? So I'll say, hey, I'm going to test you first of all using these inputs. And so I can check those intermediary variables, A and B matrices in this case, and then I can check for the final result, right? So here's, now I can find out and make sure that their final result is correct for those same set values, or I can put in a random set of inputs, okay? So that's the thing that's really nice too, is that I can set it up so that I generate a random input for everybody gets a different thing. And that's make sure that they don't just hard code numbers into their program, and it only works with one set of numbers. And so I have like a whole Matlab M file of my own that is all about different ways to generate random inputs to systems. So you get really good at that too. So then it evaluates those things, and you'll notice that most of these are marked as pre-tests. So that means that they can test these things without having to submit it, right? But then I usually have one or two things at the end which are not pre-tests. So in this case, this very last one, right? So basically what this is saying is you can kind of get feedback on all these things except for the very last thing. So make sure that you've got everything pretty much ready, then you can submit it. I usually give them 3 chances to submit it, and so if they get it wrong the first one, they can fix it. So that's basically sort of how I use it, and I have found that it really engages the students a lot more in their programming. When I sit down to talk to them about their code, they have so much more to say, because they can just simply say, well, I was really struggling with this, and then I figured this out, but now I'm having this problem. And it helps them to go beyond just trying to get code that runs to actually, making sure that their code is doing the right thing. So that's pretty much what I have. So I would love to hear from you guys as well.
Thank you very much, Heather. Do we have any questions from anyone?
I think it's very important to be able to actually grade automatically code, and not only code, also like normal problems, because it frees so much time for the professor to engage in other ways with the students. So 2 questions regarding other programming languages such as Python or R and stuff like that. Do they have something like this, like you can go to some kind of online system, and then you could input your code and check your code against some kind of pre-given answer or something like this? And then how much does a site license cost for Matlab? Do you have an idea per student, more or less? Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So the first question I'm going to defer to the whole group, but let me answer the second one. So I think it really depends on the size of your institution, how many students are going to be using it. The last I checked, so this was several years ago, and we have a fairly small school, like I said. So our licensing is probably for, I would say, about maybe 60 seats. It was close to $7,000, I think, a year. But as I mentioned before, the price to use Matlab online was going to be closer to $20,000 a year. So, but don't quote me on that. Contact Matt, have someone contact Matlab, and then I'm sure they'll be glad to give you a quote. But that gives you an idea of the price range. It's definitely a commitment if your university isn't using it already, but I think most universities probably are. Now, as far as other platforms like Python or R, I would love to hear from you guys. Has anybody found a similar type of self-grading platform for any of the other and other programming languages that you use with your students?
Because I know that in the computer sciences courses, in the programming courses, there are online courses that you type in your code, but I don't know how to do that. I would like to have that for my modeling classes as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know how they build any of those like online courses. Like Matlab has online courses, but I think they're developed with a different back end than this. The thing that I really like about this is just that it's very straightforward for me to, develop. Now, there are limitations, right? Because really, besides being able to test for the values of things, you can test if the presence or the absence of certain built-in functions. So you can, if you say, do this without using, the sign command, and you can say, check to make sure that sign isn't used. So there are some other things like that, but there's other things that I think I would like to be able to do more of, like, and I think if you code it carefully, you can do things like test the size of, you can check to see if the size of a matrix is the right size and things, but a lot of that takes a fair amount of coding on your end as well. So
sorry to interrupt. We are very close to the end of Heather's session. So thank you very much.
Mhm.
And